Hello everyone, my name is Rika O'Shea and I'm delighted to be here with you for the 2020 Maynooth University Arts and Culture Experience Together Apart. There's a long history in Ireland of turning to music, poetry and performance to help us navigate uncertainty and indeed survive tragedy. This virtual event comes in that tradition, and yet in an era in which technology has allowed us all to be more connected than ever. We can't bring everyone back to the beautiful Maynooth campus as we've done in previous summers for our annual soiree, but we'd like to bring a little bit of Maynooth now to you wherever you are. So stay tuned for an interesting hour of poetry, music and reflection, and join other Maynooth alumni around the world for Together Apart.
Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Together Apart, an unusual version of our summer soiree. The annual soiree has become one of the highlights of the year for the university. It's a chance for us to reconnect with old friends and former students, and to celebrate the values which Maynooth University stands for: collegiality, togetherness, friendship, and care for each other. So while we cannot have our usual soiree this year, we want to stay connected with you and to share with you the best of Maynooth. We're very proud of our colleagues across the university who have turned their talents to help our society at this time. Our colleagues in the sciences, and in particular in immunology, have been very active in understanding the spread of coronavirus. Our data scientists have assisted the government response. Our president, Professor Philip Nolan, has been doing vital work chairing the National Public Health Emergency Team's Modelling Advisory Group, providing the information which allows us to understand the spread and suppression of the virus. Our library has provided sleep pods to medics in Tala Hospital. Our social scientists have been thinking and writing about the impact of the lockdown on our society and on our personal well-being. We've all seen that across Ireland in lockdown, people have turned to creativity and culture as a way to reflect on what's happening to us and what's important to us. In what you're about to watch, you'll see the creative work of friends, colleagues and students across the university. There's poetry, fiction, song and philosophy. There are words to comfort and words to consider. Most of all, there's a belief that while we might be apart, we must remember the importance of working together. Our soiree ends with the words of Ece Temelkuran, the world-renowned novelist and political thinker, who delivered our Dean's Lecture last October on the subject of human dignity. Here she talks to us about that very subject, something so necessary for us all to focus on in these taxing times. Human dignity, cooperation, the importance of knowledge and facts, of scientific and artistic endeavour, and of the creation of real, sustainable and lasting hope out of these things. This is what Ece calls on us to remember. And as our alumni know, these are the things which define what Maynooth University is. So my thanks to Karen Kelly and the team in the alumni office, thanks to Rick O'Shea for presenting, and thanks to all of our contributors for giving so generously of their time. Most of all, our thanks to you, our alumni, for your support and solidarity. We hope it's not too long until we see you again in person, but until then, we wish you and your families safety and good health. And we hope you enjoy this virtual version of our summer soiree, Together Apart.
Smeisi Kathleen na Kiever is leachtar mé a rinne nuaghéalaige is scoil an Léon Chealtaí, agus seo Dan Gra hiag Mic-Léinn Ollscoile. Mull an oige. Tá siad glas, ró glas, dearg glas. Gursacha na múni geara, buchalí na rólís is an coppla carpaci, coscín misní in a bóci tóna. Fech ma rua wartasach, chan as the torthalacht of Malacu go Malacach ar catwalk and arts block. San dúdlúdí hall, chiad walú a coliachta a chealch go méil clúsach, ón wuchal sin grunge agus a stanú lom drúiseach. Siúla matarthú go héadhar is braham orthú go héig, ag stróníil a shilin siad, is go gurt is alles am réig, is faoi manam Stala morthú me ghean gan éirí is mo chórlia críana. Se, Jan hí do grad in eile diet. Díalam, díama, dúile, dóchas. Ein wille bulle, ein wille builteach. Ein chuislach, ein jólach. Clastra, bakken, foibach.
Trying to keep the balance between freedom and loneliness. Trying to keep the balance between love and lust. Lately my balance is easily swaying, when all that I know is turning to dust. Dust, dust swirling around. I can't bring it down to the ground to see. Dust, dust swirling around. It's caused more problems for man than me. The powers of the mind are stronger than body. But your body invades the thoughts in my head, and all is balanced while you are around me. But when you leave me, I am weighted and weighed. Dust, dust swirling around. I can't bring it down to see. Dust, dust swirling around. It's caused more problems for man than me. The scales of justice are hidden in the stars, but I watch the night to be closer to you. And as Libra watches my doubts and desires, It's caused more problems for man than me. It's caused more problems for man than me.
That was Libra, performed by Lemoncello. It's the collaborative project of Maynooth University grads Irish songwriter Laura Quirk and cellist Claire Kinsella, nominated as Best Emerging Folk Act in the RTE Radio 1 Folk Awards 2019. Before that, Caitlín McKeever from the School of Celtic Studies, Love Poem to University Students. Next, professional dancer Oran Leong performing Together, a short clip of a playful dance improvisation that he performed with his golden Labrador, Ophira. He says, "It made both of us smile, and hopefully it'll bring a smile to the Maynooth community too." But first, Áine Ryan is an award-winning journalist and writer who lives in Westport, County Mayo. The edited essay she reads here first appeared in the Irish Times in June and is inspired by her love of the Irish Islands and her life for 16 years on Clare Island.
In deference to my first-hand knowledge of island living, I've called my coronavirus confinement journal my Alcatraz diary. However, unlike Clint Eastwood's character Frank Morris in the famous film, my escape back to the mainland didn't involve digging any tunnels or underwater swimming. Indeed, now that restrictions have eased, I can gaze at my former home, Clare Island, from a rosary of Clew Bay beaches without fear of being shackled by the fuzz. The pandemic has made the offshore islands of Ireland into world aparts again, unreachable places of our imaginations, where the ghosts of John Millington Synge and Peg Sayers are free to roam without fear of being asked directions to the nearest cafe or pub by wide-eyed tourists. Perhaps this hiatus from the onslaught of hordes of visitors, escaping from an increasingly globalised world, is a blessing in disguise. Perhaps it is giving these special outposts a chance to breathe in the ocean air again, treasure the unbridled beauty of their home place, and count the pebbles on the beach. There is no doubt that these communities will adapt to the new circumstances. It is in their race memory to be self-sufficient and to survive. Anthropologist Robin Fox encapsulates the spirit of islanders so poetically and pithily in his 1995 book, The Tory Islanders, A People of the Celtic Fringe. At the very highest universal level, he writes, Tory represents a hymn to the human spirit. Humanity consists here not only in heroism, although there is that too, but in many little things that collectively make a viable way of life in the teeth of the odds. That makes me think of a winter in the late 1980s when one storm after another meant we in Clare Island were cut off from the mainland for weeks on end. It was back in the days when the piers were shorter, the boats were smaller, and the world beyond the waves and the swell often became an exotic mirage. Dancing at the Crossroads took on a whole new meaning that winter as we discovered an Inuit condition called piblochtoch. Also known as Arctic hysteria, the Inuit would take to the tundra and carry out all sorts of daft or dangerous feats after particularly harsh winter conditions. So I imagine when the late Clare Island philosopher Michael Joe O'Malley streaked from his home in the village of Ballitooey Moor back in the 1930s, it was after a long spell of bad weather. I'm guessing too it was after a barrage of hailstone showers as big as golf balls and winds that would put the heart crossways in a banshee that a daredevil lighthouse keeper walked atop the railings outside the Lantern Gallery. A feat not for the faint-hearted. One even a Bolshoi ballerina might balk at. Of course, he could have imbibed some of Michael Joe's hooch. But Clare Island Lighthouse teeters on the edge of 250 feet cliffs, so he wouldn't have wanted to be seeing double. Our island communities have long ago become inured to the whims of the weather and its diktats of isolation. They know better than any of us that the calm comes after the storm, that life adjusts and finds a new balance, a delicate new equilibrium. Indeed, islanders are masters and mistresses whose historical narrative resonates during these uncertain days.
This time last year, we were celebrating the work of Leonard Cohen at the summer school and the alumni evening. And there's a wonderful line of Leonard Cohen where he talks about the fact that the rich have got their channels in the bedrooms of the poor. And I thought of that line recently, and I thought about the people who are so poor that they don't even have bedrooms. And the thought was sparked by something I saw on television from Hart Island in New York, which is the burial place, an industrial burial place for homeless people. And so many hundreds and hundreds of people who died on the streets in New York of COVID were buried there in mass graves, along with the more than 1 million other people who have been buried there over the last century. And I wrote this poem, which is called Hart Island, New York. The poor are always with us, expecting a fair deal, a square meal, depending on what's given, hunting for a box to live in. The poor are always with us, hoping against hope, clinging to a fraying rope, knowing life is bloody hard, never turning the trump card. The poor are always with us, no intensive care, just undiagnosed despair. Their land of the free, a trench in Potter's Field. The poor are always with us, an industrial grave for the hopeless and the brave, and afterwards the silence, each one an island. The poor are always with us at the midnight hour, a despondent congregation in the shadow of the tower.
That was animated short film The Third Script from Dr. Mohammed Javad Kajavi, who's with the Department of Media Studies at Maynooth University. It's inspired by the outcomes of his practice-led PhD research at Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. Before that, John MacKenna, novelist and winner of the Hennessy Irish Times and Cecil Day Lewis Awards and associated staff member with the Maynooth University Department of Adult and Community Education. He was performing his poem Heart Island, New York, written about the industrial burial place of hundreds of homeless COVID-19 sufferers who died on the streets of New York. Next, we have current head of the Department of Philosophy, Professor Philip Roseman, who was recently accepted into the Royal Irish Academy. He asks us to consider whether the current COVID-19 crisis has possibly woken humanity up to the fact that there is a world which is independent of us, that this event is, perhaps, an opportunity after all. We followed that with 2016 Maynooth graduate Alana Thornburg, a harpist from County Mayo. She's currently working on her debut solo album due for release in 2021. And then Maynooth alum and debut author Áine Griffin, talking about her hugely successful novel When All Is Said.
Hello, I am Philip Roseman, Professor of Philosophy at Maynooth University. At the end of the 18th century, the German philosopher Immanuel Kant came up with a really strange and astonishing idea. The idea is that we don't really encounter the world around us as it is in itself. What we encounter is human structures we have imposed on the world. All we encounter of the world is encountered through those human structures that we have ourselves imposed. Now, that sounds very, very theoretical and abstract and perhaps ultimately irrelevant, but it isn't. I'll give you a practical example. If, like me, you live in the country, you regularly encounter, perceive, see fields and cows and people. But what are fields? Well, fields are grazing grounds, or fields are the picturesque setting of a village that is visited by tourists. And what are cows? Well, cows are sources of milk and meat, and so ultimately of revenue. And what are people? Well, look at the tourist I just mentioned. Of course, the tourist is a human being from another part of Ireland or from another part of the world whom we welcome. But unfortunately, this human being is also a source of revenue. In certain contexts, we now speak of human resources, which is really a very, very unfortunate phrase, suggesting that human beings are merely resources for a larger economic or technological system. There may be a price to pay for this Kantian way of looking at the world, seeing only those structures that we ourselves have imposed. It's possible that the crises of the last few decades, crises of environmental degradation, climate change, scandalous inequality between first world and so-called third world countries. It could be that these crises are ultimately due to the fact that we have no longer listened enough to the world in itself and paid too exclusively attention to the structures that we have imposed. Now, these problems have not escaped the attention of philosophers. People like Martin Heidegger in Germany or in France, Michel Foucault, Michel de Certeau, Jean-Luc Marion have come up with something like a remedy to the Kantian position. They say that occasionally in our lives we face what they call events, ruptures. Marion says saturated phenomena. These events throw something at us that is unexpected, that we don't really have the intellectual categories but practical abilities to deal with. Something that explodes the structures with which we've become comfortable and that seem to enable us to deal with the world. So the event is something that wakes us up to the fact that there is something like a world that is independent of us, that has demands of its own, to which we have to conform to a certain extent. Perhaps this COVID-19 crisis, despite all the problems that it brings death, it brings illness, it brings all kinds of economic problems, but perhaps it holds an opportunity as well, the opportunity of being an event in the sense that I just explained.
Hello, this is Áine Griffin, author of When All Is Said. I am also an alumni of Maynooth University, having qualified there with the Higher Diploma in Community and Youth Work back in 99, 2000. So I'm delighted to be with you today, and I thought I would just take a couple of minutes to do a little reading from my book. So just to tell you a little bit of background so that you understand the context of this reading. This is the story of Maurice Hannigan, who is an 84-year-old Irish farmer who sits to the bar of his local hotel one significant night of his life to drink 5 toasts to the 5 most important people in his life. And through these 5 stories and these 5 drinks, we learn just who Maurice Hannigan is, and we see all his highs and lows and his successes and failures, and we see that he is a man full of regret and a man full of secrets, a cantankerous man, a lovable man, a deeply flawed man that I hope you will fall in love with. And indeed, this book is available not only in Ireland and the UK, it is available in the States and Australia and New Zealand, and it'll be soon available in 17 foreign languages. And right now you can get it in China, Germany, France, Italy. So wherever you are, you might look it up and you can get it on ebook. You can download the audio. The audio is read by the wonderful Niall Buggy. So please, I hope you might enjoy it at some stage, but here is a little snippet. And in this toast, Maurice is raising his glass to his son Kevin, and indeed he is speaking directly to Kevin through the whole book. So this is a small little reading that I hope you enjoy, and to all of you out there, I hope you are safe and well. When you were small, no more than 4, I came in late one evening. The kitchen was empty, spick and span as it always was, straight after the dinner. I knew Sadie would have been elbow deep in soapy water, scrubbing the kitchen back to order not an hour before. My place lay set at the table. And as I lifted the saucepan lid off my dinner and stuck it in the aga, I could hear your voices from down the hall. I sat to the Meath Chronicle, perusing the market news, but try as I might not to let it, the laughter got the better of me in the end, and I left the paper down and headed in your direction. The bathroom door was open, and as I passed it I could see the bath still quarter full with a couple of surviving studs and a yellow duck floating among them. I held back in the hallway, peering in at the pair of you next door in your bedroom. "Kevin, I love you. Your mammy loves you," Sadie said, marking every word with a kiss to your tummy as you lay on the ground being dried. "She loves every bone of you. Do you know that?" "Mm-hmm," you replied, happily watching puffs of white rise from the Johnson's baby powder container every time you pressed its middle. "And does Kevin love Kevin?" Puff upon puff of whiteness filled the air. "Does Kevin love Kevin?" I repeated in my head. You didn't reply. Instead, you turned the talcum powder upside down, shaking it vigorously onto your tummy and the floor. "Because if you love this wee boy," she continued, dispersing the powder all over you, "and are always kind to him and always try to understand him, then I think he will be the happiest little man in the whole wide world." She used the corner of the bath towel to rub the white smatterings from the carpet. "Will you do that? Will you love Kevin for me? Will you, you rascal?" she asked, administering another tickle that let loose more squeals of laughter. I never disturbed you, but made my way into our darkened bedroom and sat on the side of the bed, looking out at the silhouette of our trees and the hills against the night sky, brightened by one of the biggest moons I'd ever seen. It was too much, even for me, a man of 43, to try to comprehend what Sadie had said, let alone a child of 4. Loving yourself. The very thought. I reached for the bedside lamp, fumbling to find the switch under the shade. I pulled the curtains, closed, and stood looking at the brown flowers with their orange centres, one after another, row upon row. My finger rose to follow the pattern of the petals, my blackened nail and layers of hardened skin that had no hope of feeling the fibres circled anyway. "Oh, you're home," Sadie said from the door behind me. "Yeah, I thought I'd change out of these," I said, my fingers pulling away from the flowers, pretending at taking off my jumper. A first for everything, I suppose. "I left the dinner for you." I saw that. "This man's off to bed." Her head nodded in the direction of your room. "Are you coming in to say goodnight?" "I'll be in now." How many times did Sadie talk to you in that way, I wonder? And is that why you are the man you are, so sure and happy in your life?
Two lorry loads of bananas by Felispeaks. The warm house met her face with cold silence. No one was home yet. She had about an hour to sit and think without loud interruptions. She picked her favorite spot, perching on her bedroom pillow, allowing the stench of the day to just pass over. In a state of serenity, chewing out her thoughts with a thumb firmly between gapped teeth. She cocked her head to the side in the way her thoughts flowed and wondered if love happened to curious 12-year-olds. She wondered, will love roll its eyes at her, reveal itself to dismantle her naivety? Will love disappoint her like an heiress in a whorehouse, bottle her expectations and be left naked without words to flower her? Perhaps love will have her follow it, obsessed with its scent, fill her head and undress her sanity kiss after kiss. She grinned at the thought. Oh, please, wouldn't love just, maybe, perhaps, gently destroy her? To taste sour honey, to view herself through broken mirror, to be ruined beyond repair, but at least chosen. Maybe, just maybe, love would not be on such a mission. Now, comfortably in the ebb and flow of her thoughts, she thought too, maybe love didn't come with police sirens and ambulance wails, but with just the first aid kits for a plaster or two. Maybe love was like a jobless middle-aged man sat on the front porch under Texan heat, swatting flies lazily, passing time with mediocre blurs of excitement and sensation, like reaching for an itchy body part and rare seconds of eye-closing pleasure, then nothing. Not even silence. What if it didn't drown all parties involved like a tsunami, but gently just passed by like breeze rustling palm trees? Brief, uneventful. Love could be dangerous, but much worse. Imagine it was simple. Instead, she hoped love would gallop excitedly to her doorstep, single her out in the crowd and knock her over. She practiced how she would greet love, with wind in her hair, arms stretched out towards everything weird and wonderful it could possibly offer. She imagined that love was like a day at sea, sun glaring, waves crashing, clouds parting, children laughing and crashing against itself, breaking into spits of water, turning sailors into screaming ladies. She imagined love like chaos, exciting yet calming. Love finally arrived with a suit and tie and 2 lorry loads of bananas. Overwhelming. Love comes rather confusing and surprising. Love can give you your favorite things, and yet it grieves you. How, you ask, and why, you want to know. You search for love and begged it to find you. With its arrival, you question its motives. You request its expiry date and you check for bruises. Love manages to fit in small places. So you sit in your home full of bananas. Love isn't accompanied by sense, but suddenly, without answer or even an explanation, it is exactly how you'd want it. And also exactly how you never imagined it.
Tan saoir techt go buí, agus dílir chrin go farsing, Tá de cear go farí, is blá buí war an leting, Tarlam o chalín lam, agus siúle muid le chéile, Goí muid nead on ein, Soing lam ag bon le tléve, Tarlam o chalín lam. Tógid gríon an réit, agus hart fón na hesa, agus cuir me war, will go vlaid war an leting, Tarlam o chalín lam, agus siúle muid le chéile, Goí muid nead on ein, Soing lam ag bon le tléve, Tarlam o chalín lam, Tarlam o chalín lam.
Hello, my name is Áine Ryan, and since September 2019, I have been a writer in residence at Maynooth University in partnership with Kildare Arts Service and Libraries. And it has been a very enjoyable and productive residency for me. I've had great fun getting to know the students, getting to know the Kildare community, and getting to know the staff at the university, and working alongside a fellow writer in residence, Sue Rainsford. So thank you to everyone who made the residency very special. I would like to mark the end of my engagement with a poem from my debut collection, Bloodroot, which is published by Dura Press. And it's a poem that I think speaks to these lockdown times. This poem is titled Bog Medicine. Drink these star-leafed nettles and keep in your purse a fern. To become invisible, say your harm to the hill. This hill is pagan, this hill is hill. It will answer in bog tongue and occasional fire, burning back the earth along the heather stream. Despite bald heels of rock, despite the kissy mink, despite a saintly air, until the stream runs dark with what needs to blacken out of you.
Poet Áine Ryan, reading from her critically acclaimed debut collection, Bloodroot. Each year, Maynooth University hosts 2 writers in residence in partnership with Kildare County Council's Arts Office. The writers work with students and with the local community to foster new writing and creativity. This year, our writers in residence were Anne-Marie and Sue Rainsford, whose debut novel, Follow Me to Ground, won the Kate O'Brien Award. You also heard Sally Nigrinon, an award-winning sean-nós singer from Connemara and senior tutor in Maynooth University's Centre for the Irish Language, singing an Irish language version of the popular folk song Will You Go Lassie Go. And before that, Felicia Olusanya, also known as Felispeaks, is a Nigerian-Irish poet, performer and playwright who graduated from Maynooth with a BA in 2016. Lost Bananas is a love poem about understanding love as an adult from what she'd known as a child. Now we have for you 2010 music grad Sarah Vaughan, now based in London, singing Evanescence's Bring Me to Life. Novelist and short story writer Evelyn Conlon, reading from 2013's Not the Same Sky, and Maynooth University 2019-20 writer-in-residence Sue Rainsford, with the opening of a short story called Mamba, which was published in Volume 5 of Winter Papers in November last year. This section finishes with Kildare native Bernadette Cotter, awarded a BA in 2018 and who's currently awaiting the results of her MA in Critical and Creative Media. She returned to nursing in April after a nursing home in Leixlip put out a call for local nurses to help out after their staff started falling ill with COVID-19. What struck Bernadette was the sadness of the situation, residents dying without their loved ones, and the effect it had on the staff also, who'd known and cared for them for years. She was also moved by the kindness of the local community, sending in food to help everyone keep going. Love and Pizza was written during this time.
How can you see into my eyes like open doors, leading you down into my core, where I've become so numb?
from not the same sky. The Thomas Arbuthnot was 57 days at sea when Christmas came around. More than halfway, Charles Strutt hoped. He was leaving the deck to go to his quarters when he heard one of the older girls shouting out to the sea. Her face was not towards the deck. She was hollering so loudly the words could be heard perfectly by all who stood ready to dance. Her voice even carried above the sound of sail and water and wood. In fact, it seemed caught in the wood, as if the timber was echoing it back to her. The ship has well rounded the corner now. There's no going back. She followed with another wail of a sentence. She seemed to start high and go low. It was hard to know what effect, if any, that she intended to have by making this noise. But hot on its heels followed the slowest, lowest moan, which moved up first one pitch, then swelled into a second, gathering a scream under its echo and rising further, if that were possible, into the most ferocious howling. Everyone was now involved in these gutturals, weeping for their lost land and their families, immersed in their threnody. Charles stood rooted to the spot, helpless in the face of this terrible sound, the hairs standing up on his neck. It would have to stop. It seemed to him to be the erasure of hope. The tone was eerie, poignant, and frightening at the same time. The parts of the singing, if that's what you could call it, melted into a chorus. It's only a keener, a girl beside him said, a lament. It won't do you any harm. That didn't matter. They would have to stop. He told more girls about the danger of losing their pudding if they didn't. Gradually, the noise subsided. Thank God. The last few who were still lost on the sound came abruptly to an end and looked at him strangely. But what puzzled Charles most was that in the next moment, having looked at him with a certain amount of resignation, the girls, led by the three who were last to stop, burst into a loud, joyous song and ran together into the middle, kicking their feet this way and that, hitting their heels off the wood and laughing loudly. See, it's all right, the girl beside him said. And in a flash, he saw an understanding that was much too old for her, almost as if she was forgiving him something.
Mumba. When I was 10, I fell down hard and knocked my left hip out. Mother said she could tell right away by the sound it made I'd never walk straight again. The sound and the sore pink stain I left on the ground when she lifted me. Pink for pain. I was 3 months in bed waiting on it to heal, and after that, every time I took a step, people cocked their ears, thought I'd started dancing to music they'd yet to hear. It mightn't have marked my childhood so much if I'd had any other name but Lily. Lily limps a lot, limping Lily. There'd been a wet sound when I fell, which was the sound of the tissue tearing, and afterwards there'd been the soupy, stirred feel of its swelling, so I assumed, wrongly, that the pain I'd be living with thereafter would be slippery and slick. But it's a hard pain, not just hard, but dry, so that when I walk it makes an unoiled, whining sound, a creak in summer parched wood. Some days I don't hear it, and then other days it's loud, unforgivably and punishingly loud, the joint coming out of its socket, that quick, rogue movement that causes the creak before it ducks into the much-worn divot again, on and on, whittling and corroding. On these days, I lie down flat and still for hours at a time rather than hear it. These lie still days that I call my melancholies. There was a time I told myself it was the creaking that kept people away.
Hi there, my name is Bernadette Cotter, and I wrote this poem after returning to nursing to help out on the front line during the pandemic, and it's called Love and Pizza. Another day on the front line, one more beloved friend passes away. We were working against an enemy unseen, battling to save those in our care, cut off like an island to keep people safe. The world looked in our window. And our hands tried to heal and always hold, and we wept for the dying and their loved ones who could not be there to say the final goodbye, and we repeated those last prayers and the promises never to forget. At lunchtime, the distraction of food for those well enough to enjoy it. Some pick at their plates, and then the ice cream trolley arrives and I serve great creamy scoops into bowls, fill them up, and no one says no thanks. And then the pizzas arrive, and we didn't realise we were starving until the aroma of fresh crusts and sauce and roast peppers fill the air. A welcome gift from a local pizza parlour to acknowledge our work and our toll, and suddenly there's something to smile about. It's like they said, we know what you're going through, and we say thank you. Look after yourselves and be nourished and welcome happiness back even for a little while. So thanks for the pizzas, so much more than food, a symbol of kindness, a symbol of love, needed more than ever in this time. It brings us all to humanity's shared table.
We now reach our final two speakers of the event. Arts and culture has always been integral to Ireland and its people. A radically new digital humanities project at Maynooth University called the MacMorris Project set out to create the first annotated and interactive digital map of all cultural players, from poets, patrons and pamphleteers to translators, travel writers and administrators between 1541 and the Flight of the Earls in 1607. Professor Pat Palmer of the Department of English and Arts and Humanities Research Institute tells us more about this fascinating cultural landscape of what was undoubtedly a rich and transformative period in Irish history. That's followed by Turkish journalist and author Ece Temelkuran. Her latest book, How to Lose a Country, The 7 Steps from Democracy to Dictatorship, published in 2019, details the political turmoil in Turkey and the dangers of populist and far-right discourses for democratic nations. Here, Ece talks about human dignity, cooperation, and the importance of knowledge and scientific fact in these taxing times, as well as the creation of real, sustainable, and lasting hope.
My name is Pat Palmer and I'm the Professor of Renaissance English in the University of Maynooth, and I'm also directing a project which is funded by the Irish Research Council into early modern Ireland. The project is called the MacMorris Project, and it's trying to give us a really full picture of what was going on in early modern Ireland. Early modern Ireland is that period in the mid to late 16th century, early 17th century, where everything changed in Ireland. It's a period of the Tudor conquest and the plantations, and of course the transfer of power from the Gaelic Irish and the Old English to the New English. And we get a very distorted picture of what Ireland was like from the English reporters of the time. Here's, for example, what Shakespeare has to say about the Irish in his character MacMorris, the person from whom we take the name of the whole project. Here's MacMorris. He's the Irish soldier fighting with Henry V, and he goes, somebody says to him about his nation, and he says, "Of my nation? What is my nation? What is my nation? Who talks of my nation? Is a villain and a bastard and a knave and a rascal." So that's what Shakespeare gives us to understand about early modern Ireland. Spenser isn't much better. He's got a lot of Irish natives sitting on a hillside on a fine summer's day taking lice out of each other's hair. So this picture is obviously a kind of propagandistic picture, but what we don't really have is the Irish side of the story. So the MacMorris Project seeks to find that side of the story, and it is looking at Irish language writings in Latin, but also writings and translations from Spanish and Italian by people who are either living in Ireland or the Irish themselves. So we're looking at the families of bardic poets, the councillor poets of the Gaelic lordships. We're looking at the legal families, we're looking at the medical families who are translating all of the up-to-date medical texts from Italy, which was where it was all happening in medical terms. But we're also looking at the people who are going abroad onto the continent as the crisis develops and as the conquest advances. And so we have this huge network of people engaged with the King of Spain or the Pope or whoever it is, and these Irish colleges that begin to fan out across the continent. So that by the time the project ends, and it's at the end of its first of 4 years at the moment, I think we'll have a really comprehensive picture that will transform our understanding of what Ireland was like in the early modern period, and also what was lost in the conquest and what we might return to sustain us in the future.
We are going through some really hard times thanks to Corona. It is truly maddening, and we all miss the normal. But then let me remind you what normal was. Just right before Corona, the world was on the brink of a third world war because an Iranian high-level officer was killed. The climate activists were officially labeled as terrorists. The ultra-right was on the rise in several countries. Many of us were repeating the same questions. Am I mad? Are they mad? Has the whole world gone mad? Ironically, these questions were written by Russian writer Yulia Besobra. When she wrote these questions in her memoir, she was suffering under Stalin. It is quite tragic that her questions today resonates with us, even though we are living under democratic systems, not bloody dictators. The reason for us to be in such a state of shock is because there's a certain kind of global and political insanity taking over the entire world. It does not only attack our democratic institutions, but it also damages the basic consensuses of humanity. I call this evil of banality. I reverse the term, Hannah Arendt term, banality of evil. Naturally, this maddening political and moral condition did not happen overnight. It took us decades to come to this point. The central problem has been the unleashed capitalism, because when the dominant understanding of the world and the human is based upon profit, it is only natural that the mediocre and eventually the banal becomes the king. When the banality rules our communication, culture, and science, there would be no reason to elevate the humankind from its condition. The sacredness of profit turned the entire depoliticized communication sphere into a carnival of banality. The explanation was simple. Banality was what people wanted, therefore it was profitable, and therefore it was democratic. And in this new world, what was profitable was good, beautiful, and right. And since it was put by Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan on both sides of the Atlantic, there was no alternative. Thanks to the current condition in our political and communication sphere, we are represented by the worst of our kind. Even those among us who are determined to believe in humankind sometimes feel desperate. A paralyzed state of mind emerges everywhere, and this zeitgeist generates a dangerous question: is the humankind evil by nature? This question represents the final defeat of the human mind, and it takes a long and excruciating time to understand that the question is in fact wrong. Whenever this question creeps into our minds, we must remember that we are going through a certain time where morbid symptoms are more visible than ever. To keep seeing these morbid symptoms exhausts even the best of us. Whenever we fall into the loop of such wrong questions, it is a must to remember the recent riots of our times from Tahrir in Egypt to Yellow Vests in France. The shared demand of these uprisings was same everywhere: dignity. We have to see the determination of our kind to hold on to its dignity. Everywhere on the planet, this demand comes forward. People are missing the joy of living a dignified life. So we must not be deceived by the worst representations of our kind that happen to run our world temporarily, but we have to remember that if we lose our faith in humankind, we just have to look closer.
Good, 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 good. Good, good, good news. I got a crowd of men.
That was an uplifting performance by the award-winning Maynooth University Chamber Choir at the 21st birthday celebration of Maynooth University in 2018. I hope you enjoyed the 2020 Maynooth University Arts and Culture Experience. Thanks for watching, and thanks to everybody for their contributions. Do tell other Maynooth graduates to check it out. This virtual event is about bringing the arts to the public, and the public, in this case the Maynooth alumni community and their friends, into the arts. Maynooth University believes in the powerful influence of the arts in the civil society, in helping us understand ourselves and communities, and helping us cope by connecting to one another, whether in the same room or halfway across the globe. Stay safe, and we look forward to welcoming you back to Maynooth University in the future.